what am I looking at? Because this thing is so confusing. It's like worse than like an insurance claim. Like I don't know what to look at. Are there anything?
At least with like an insurance claim, like I know what a buildup is or a crown. Like the words that are in these things, like unless you're in the industry, like I have no idea what they mean. Alex, you know one of my favorite things to do, because I think I'm inherently cheap, is what?
I don't know. What? Save money?
Yes, always save money. So I figured we could go through on this episode and find probably like the easiest way that we've been able to save money at the practices.
Yeah, it's probably the one easiest thing you can do.
And we've talked about this like concept before,
and we're
podcast.
massive like optimizers. Like give me a system and I'll try to optimize the crap out of it. But this thing is like, this is an Eric territory type of system that you will implement, because
I am not the systems person. This is one that I dove into, so I must have really liked it for some reason. But like I was saying, we've kind of talked about this before on the podcast, but on this episode we're going to bring on the people that we actually use at our offices for doing merchant services, right? And how they've helped save us a ton of money. Okay, so this is like the one system I dealt with more, right? So I'm going to give us all a little bit of background.
The background of my story with this?
Of your story that I'm going to tell on your behalf.
I'd like to relive this.
Yes. So it's the story of merchant services, right? So when we had practices, right after graduating, and I say we, but you had a practice when we first graduated, in Newport Beach, which was probably one of the most saturated areas in the country to buy a practice. But one of the things that we, when you're opening an office, you need X, Y, Z, all that kind of stuff. And one of them is like, how do you accept payments? And so we had used, I think we had first inherited whatever company the previous dentist was using, right? Mm-hmm. And we just thought like, okay, this is fine. Like, who knows? And then I think we must have listened to a lecture or went to some course, and they were like, check your fees on merchant services, right? And we're like, okay, I didn't even know that was a thing to look at. So we looked at something. I didn't understand it at all. I don't know what like an interchange fee is and like these 10 other fees. And so then we went to someone that was recommended and had them look at it. And of course they do the same thing where they say, oh, your fees are too high, right? I can get you a lower rate. Like, let me get you a lower rate. Mm-hmm. So we started using that guy. Mm-hmm. And that was good for a while, we think. Who knows? We still don't know if any of our fees were actually good, right? And then when we opened up our practices a few years later, that's when we started using Flex. And so Flex is, for people that don't know, like a patient engagement software, basically like automatic text reminders helping you with treatment plans, that kind of stuff, right? And they had an integration with a merchant service provider, like a payment processor, that integrated really well with their system. And so we went to that guy that we'd been using forever for merchant service, and he's like, hey, we don't integrate. And we're like, oh, crap, because we kind of wanted the best of both worlds. So we ended up switching from him to another one. So now we're on number 3, right, in the span of like 3 years. We used that for a while, but that company, who's a huge, massive player in the space, the biggest challenges I had with them is I like that they integrated with Flex. Their customer service was probably the worst customer service I have ever dealt with. I could never get a hold of them. They were really hard to get a hold of. Like 2 weeks later, you'd hear something. I constantly got emails that I needed to be like PCI compliant, which in a second, when I introduce Roman and Steven here, they can tell me about all that stuff because that was super annoying to deal with. Yeah. And so we used them for a bit. And then when we were getting ready to sell our practices, we were trying to figure out how to optimize our practice, right? How to make it worth the most amount that we could. Mm-hmm. And one of those things that we realized was that you could start charging the patient credit card fees or pass the fee on to the patient. And then like any other dentist, we go on Facebook and we see what everyone else is using. And one company that came up was nadapayments, right? And their whole model was kind of, or how they pitched it to us and a lot of the other dentists was, hey, we can pass that fee along and we do it compliantly and we do it the right way, and it's going to save you a ton of money. So I was like, okay, I'm trying to sell my practice. I need to save a ton of money. Let's look into this. So we reached out to Roman and Steven and that, and we've been using nadapayments now over a year. It's worked so well, and I know it's worked well because my team never complains about it. I haven't had patients complain about any of the credit card surcharging issues. And I mean, I don't know, we liked them so much that a few months ago when I was like, we need to figure out how to make money on this podcast, I was like, hey, do you guys want to be sponsors on here? And they were nice enough to somehow take a flyer on us and say that's okay. So that's been nice. So Roman, Steven, thanks for coming on. And I figured we could kind of deep dive into this whole merchant service stuff and surcharging and why it's becoming more commonplace and how to make sure you're doing everything the right way. Because literally we saved like over $20,000 when we were looking to sell our practice. And when you're selling a practice and you sell it even to like a DSO and they buy you at a multiple, saving $20,000, if you got a 6X, is like $120,000 added to your value. So like you need to think of things that way. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Nice. So sorry, that was my long-winded story on all that. I think I'm very. I was very. I was joking. I was like, needed. I feel like we've gone through as many, payment processors almost as like dental marketers, right? And so like when you finally find something that you feel like is a good fit and it works, like I like to tell people more about that because I feel like that. I feel like I don't know if you guys feel that like that too. A lot of the customers you guys get, are you guys getting people that are like, we've been using the same company for 20 years, or is it like, man, on to the next one, like every year or so they're changing?
It's such a mix. It's a really good question. It's such a mix. Some have stayed with their original processor because they just don't think about it. They don't really look at their merchant fees, and they're like, oh, well, this was provided by this practice management software and they integrate. I'm just going to leave it. And before they know it, they're like at 3.5%, 4%, 5%. We've seen way worse than that, but it's not really something to talk about because those are rare cases. If you're above 5%, it's just ludicrous. Others, they have switched between one company to another because of lack of customer service, lack of features, increased rates, not given what was promised. So there's a mix of it. When it does boil down to it, how do you make payment processing interesting to the general public who has, like, as dentists, you guys know this more than anybody, business owners, you have so much going on, right, throughout your day. To sit down and then be like, hey, what am I paying for credit card processing fees? All you need is maybe 15 minutes and you realize, okay, this can be better. How can I make it better? I need to speak to somebody and let's figure it out. This is where we come in.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, it is one of those things where it's like, I kind of say it's like sometimes with like dental supplies, right? Or like labs, like you get comfortable either with the same company you've been using or same lab. You don't realize that your prices have like just kind of, they slowly creep up, right? I feel like that's probably the same thing that happens, a lot of times with dentists and dealing with like, payment processors is like, it's easy to like, give a certain price when you're trying to make a sale with someone. And then like over time, stuff can kind of move up and, you don't maybe tell everyone that, so then people just don't realize it. And then if they do, you work with them again, right? I feel like that's what happens with a lot of times in supplies and labs. So, and it's one of those items that's like, it's significant, but like, are you spending $200,000 a year on fees? No. So sometimes it just gets like, I think like bumped down as like
push to the bottom of the list of like things to audit. You're like, oh, I probably should look at it, but like, I'll look at it tomorrow, and that tomorrow turns into like 3 years from now, and you're
now $60K in a hole that you could have not have to. So it becomes actually one of the, depending on the size of the practice and the volume processed, it could be one of the top 5 expenses of a practice. It could be one of the top 10 expenses of a practice. But once it's looked at, you start seeing things much different. You're like, hey, wait a minute, I could eliminate 80% of my fees. This is new equipment, reinvest into my practice, bonuses for the staff, a whole staff member's salary, whatever the case may be, depending on all of that. So when you start kind of collating all of this and looking at it from a different angle, it starts making a lot of sense. So when it's initially overlooked, fair enough, we all get busy, but then once it is focused on, I think it's a game changer because you can do so much with those funds.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the biggest fear that you can tell me, this is from the dentist perspective, and you guys tell me from your perspective, actually being like the people that process the payment or the company for it, is I feel like our biggest fear is that it's going to piss off a patient and you're going to lose a ton of patients because they don't want to pay a credit card fee, right? And then I think the second one is, like, I also don't want to get in trouble, right? I think that scares me more than anything, right? Like, I think in dentistry, they do a good job of saying, like, which rightfully so, like, you need to be HIPAA compliant. If you aren't, it's going to cost you a shit ton of money. If you're taking Medicaid, you better be compliant, because if not, we're going to slap you with, like, a $500,000 fine, right? And I feel like that kind of scares us. So can you go over, like, do you know, is dentistry one of the last kind of industries to really adopt this surcharging model? Or is it like one of the first ones to be doing this?
Well, in our experience, it's not that they're the last to adopt it. It's just the adoption of this is happening across all businesses, not just dentistry, retail, plastic surgery, other medical niches. It's actually happening in a uniformed way where it's spreading like a wildfire right now because everybody's trying to switch to it because in the old school sense, it's a cost of doing business. That's how doctors looked at it. Hey, this is part of a cost of doing business. And then when some business owners got tired of it, you weren't allowed to pass the fee on before. And there was like a whole huge lawsuit with Visa, MasterCard. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the business owners won the lawsuit. They won the ability to charge different prices for different forms of payment. Because before, if you accepted Visa, MasterCard, you were not allowed to charge a different price for cash or check or debit or any other form of payment. So now, when it became legal back in 2013, still nobody was doing it. COVID helped the push, right? Because businesses started charging PPF fees, this fee, that fee. And then companies in New York started coming out with, hey, let's do surcharge. Let's pass the credit card fee to the customers. Let's do it in the correct manner. So because it became legal, Visa stepped in and said, okay, if you're going to do it, you have to follow our rules. There's certain things you have to do. Otherwise, we're going to penalize you if you're not doing it correctly. And before that, like wholesalers and suppliers, they were adding the fee themselves. They were just adding 3% to the total and calling it a day. You can't do that anymore. You have to do it in a way where you have to follow Visa, MasterCard rules. And that's where we come in. We make sure that you're fully compliant. So if Visa ever comes in and checks up on you, you're not going to face a fine, which it could be up to $50,000.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah.
So then, do you guys take that? Do you guys take that liability on you? So like, if something happened, is it kind of like, if we're doing it compliant the way you're telling us to do it, is it like we should be fine, or does it some of it still fall on us too if there's an issue?
Well, it all falls on you because you are the business owner. We provide the tools with Visa, MasterCard. When we register you to make sure that they know you're surcharging. We provide the signage. Our equipment that we provide is compliant because it will itemize the surcharge, it will automatically add it, and it will automatically drop it from the system if you're using a debit card, right? But if you go ahead and you bypass that and just start doing it yourself, then you're going to get in trouble. So then you're liable for it, right? If you're not informing the patients at all and you're surprising them, even though we are telling you, hey, you have to be transparent, you need to explain the surcharge, you have to have the signage. So if you follow what we tell you to follow, you're going to be compliant. But if you're not following it, even though we gave you the tools, it's still the liability is on you to be compliant as well. We
Yeah.
give you all the tools and we make sure you are educated enough to know what to do in order not to get fined.
No, that all
Yeah.
makes sense. That's how it should be. So, I mean, what are the things then? I'm not saying people do a DIY on this, right? Like you shouldn't. But what do you guys then? What do you have to provide to make sure you're compliant? I think I heard like, signage. You have to inform the patient. What are the main things you need to be considered compliant?
You cover compliance in a couple of manners. First and foremost, it goes by state compliance. So most states share the same similar rules and regulations. Some states highlight particular areas where they need to really spell it out for their merchants and businesses to be transparent, specifically because people have tried to do this on their own and just slapped on fees without
Yeah.
having the proper system in place. So those states like uh, let's say New York, California, Illinois, they had to like put it into regulation saying like, hey, this needs to be transparent. You can't just take a calculator on the side and do this. So besides state compliance, one, you're registered with card brands, meaning Visa, Mastercard, Amex, so on and so forth, that you're doing this program. It's a recognized program, so they're aware of it. Second of all is signage that's provided, and we provide this signage in an acrylic frame. It lets patients know that there is a surcharge and they can opt out by paying with debit. This is in full transparency even before they're quoted any prices so that they're let known of this. And the most important part of the compliance is just the system itself. It has to display in dollars and cents the credit and debit price, which Steve so graciously is doing so right now, and
with
I'll
the
do so as well.
surcharge.
Yep. So it shows the breakdown of the base amount, the amount of the treatment, the surcharge amount, and the total. So there's no second guessing it. There's no calculating it on the side. Patients are let known, hey, this is 103. If you're paying by debit, it's $100. How would you like to pay? And the system will recognize whether it's credit or debit on its own. So that way the staff isn't accidentally charging a surcharge on debit cards because you're not allowed to.
So, okay. Yeah. So then like, let's use a real world example with like a practice. Let's say a practice was doing like $1 million a year, right? Let's say they were doing like $1 million a year in processing payments, right?
Yeah.
The normal way, the old school way, traditional, whatever, of doing payment processing where, you know, the dentist or the business owner kind of eats that fee. What's the normal fee that they're paying? So like, how much would they pay per year in processing fees on $1 million? If you like our podcast, check out Alex's newsletter, Just 2 Minutes. It's full of great advice, which makes sense considering it's her thoughts and not me sidetracking her every 2 seconds. You can subscribe at coupleofdentists.com. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to the pod.
Typically, that would be around, let's say, $83,000 a month or so, right? Let's say that practice has a really good rate. So I always like to lowball it because it only makes sense. Like if your savings are on a lower figure really well, then if you're paying way more than a really good rate, then it's a no-brainer. So let's say you're paying around, I don't know, $2,000 a month to process $83,000, which is the $1 million annually.
Okay.
With us, it becomes more like $400 a month.
Oh, geez,
right?
And that
You're only paying on debit transactions. So rather than paying, let's say, paying $2,000 every month, and you're spending now $24,000 a year on processing, you're actually saving $20,000, $19,000 a year. So year one, year two, this just adds up, right? And what you could do with that is really, it's up to you. New equipment, reinvest into the practice, bonuses for the staff. This is all done without shaking things up. So practices have never done this before who are coming on board, right? But their patients are absolutely seeing this everywhere they go, right? They're paying utility bills online and government, municipality, hair salon, nail salon, restaurant, bar. They see this as a norm nowadays. It's been like this for 2017 or so.
Yeah, I think.
Oh yeah, maybe even before. I always like the DMV. I feel like was the very first people to trying to get fees and stuff, and it was like, here's your $900, and here's your seemed to be a lot more. It was like pay by credit card, and it's like now $1,500. Not exactly, but or pay by check. And so I always remember having to go with my checkbook. Like who pays check for anything now?
Yeah.
But to go just to avoid that surcharge. But I mean, I guess that's it. It is becoming way more commonplace.
And I mean,
in California, the dental association charges dentists to renew their license and charge if you use a credit card.
Yeah, see?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I mean, I am kind of a cheap ass with stuff too, and I don't have an issue with it personally because at first it was a little bit more of I don't know if I want to do this. If it's something I wouldn't like, why would I want to do this with patients?
Yeah.
But and this kind of goes back to another story. Before finding you guys or someone else that's also in this space but doing it the right way, there was another company that we had spoken to, and we actually almost started with them. But then I started asking questions but what about with debit fee, debit transactions? What about this? And they're like, oh no, you just pass that fee along too. And I was like, I use ChatGPT, right? Because that's now everyone's personal whatever. And I asked, and I asked ChatGPT, is this allowed? Is this kosher to do? And it was like, no, it can't, especially if I'm in Colorado. And it was like, you can't do that anyways. And so I remember reaching out to that company, and I was like, but how are you differentiating them between credit and debit? How does my team know? How can I teach them that? And they were like, well, you can't do that. And I was like, okay, well, that went into my second part was fear of getting fined or sued or something happening, and I was like, well, I can't go with them. So Long story short on that, I think it is important to make sure you're compliant. And I know with Colorado, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think they cap it, right? Like in the state we're in, I think it's like 3% or something that you can do, or you can't charge more.
Colorado is interesting. Colorado actually. So what you're talking about, just to dissect this into a few segments, right? You hit a couple of interesting points. What you were talking about, how that fee was passed on to everything, that was known as and is known as like a dual pricing model, where that fee is passed on to all cards and all cards are treated as credit. So it operates in this gray area where there is no debit, everything is credit, pass the fee on, right? At that time and at this point, you can technically do that. It's just very frowned upon because paying a fee on a debit card, even though it's charged as a credit, it's still like using cash. So you don't want to do that. You want to give your patients the option.
Yep.
So we advocate to do a true surcharge model, meaning pass the fee on credit, not on debit. Give your patients the choice. Colorado started with just a dual pricing model, and then they adopted surcharging in like 2022, 23 or something like that. I have to double check. And then what they did was they capped it because what people were doing, again, it comes down to the state finding out the businesses are doing things non-compliantly, so they have to enforce a rule because they don't want. You're never allowed to profit from merchant processing, right? You can't profit from it.
Okay.
So what people were doing is they were trying to
charge. Yeah, they're trying to make money on it.
3%. Yeah, maybe their credit card processing was set up for that. They're paying, let's say 3% for merchant services, but then they were adding on a 4% fee and profiting 1% of the. And Colorado stepped in, just like many states, and they were like, "Hey, you can't do that." So your surcharge either has to be 2% or no more than what the pricing on the account is. So like when you're priced out on a surcharge model for 3%, your account is priced out at 3%. You're passing the fee to your patients for credit cards at 3%. And then they're not paying a fee on debit. You're giving them a choice. So it's done the correct way.
Yeah. So the best thing you can do is break even, right? Like which is fine. That's what it should be, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. You have free credit card processing at best, 100%. Yep. So it's not designed to be like another source of income. It's designed to remove an overhead.
Yeah, it's not like a tip.
No, and that bothered me here real quick. This was just another thing when I was going to lease a car. Like that's always a fun experience, right? But when I was going to lease our Toyota, right? I remember I went to one dealership and I asked them, I said, when they came up with like, their fee and it's all kind of confusing and everything like that. I asked them, I said, are you guys making any money on what the interest you guys have to pay and then what you're charging me? And they do. And it was like, they were getting it for like 6% and then they were charging me 10% interest. And I was like, as a principle really bothered me. And I remember going to him and being like, you guys should not be making money on literally that. Like, you guys should not be making margins on that. And so I don't know if they're allowed to do that or if they're supposed to, but I know in the car dealership industry, that piece kind of pisses me off. So I'm glad that like in dentistry, at least we're like kind of compliant with this.
Yeah, that's a whole other realm for me.
Yeah.
Visa also capped their rate at 3%. So like there's companies out there that are doing the dual pricing program, and they're doing 3.5% or 4% to the patient, but legally it's capped at 3%. So even if you take a card that's more than 3%, you're still only able to surcharge 3%. Now, it depends on the company you're working with. If you're working with us, we won't charge you the difference if you take a Platinum American Express card that costs 3.5%, but you're only charging the patient 3%. We're not going to go to your business and say, look, you took a card that's 0.5% more than you're surcharging, so we're going to charge you the difference. You owe us 0.5 point. We're just going to cover it for you, because we know at the end of the day, it will average out. But there's companies out there that will actually go in and charge you the difference. So then now they start picking where you're saving money and where they're going to charge you the difference because you took a card that was higher than the cost of 3%. Does that make sense?
That would basically defy the whole point of doing a surcharge model and eliminating your processing fees. You're sort of set up for surcharging, but it's like this kind of faux setup and you're paying for the difference. It's kind of pointless.
It's like you'll save on some cards, but on other cards you're gonna
Yeah.
Yeah.
actually pay a little
Yeah.
extra.
Yeah. If you want to see us use your, Visa, not your Amex, right? Which, yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of
and that's
tough.
why a lot of businesses never accepted American Express. There's a lot of doctors that are like, "Oh, can I accept American Express for this program?" Absolutely. Because now you're not paying anything to accept it. Before, American Express was one of the more expensive card brands to accept. They were closer to 4% just to process a sale. So
Yeah.
now this gives them the ability to accept any credit card and not worry about it or lose any sleep over it.
So is that probably why, and you guys may not know the answer to this, is that why, like, when I was a, not a kid, because I didn't think about credit cards as a child, but like a little bit older, like, you'd see Amex commercials and they were always felt a little bit more like luxurious, or that
Yes,
it was that their reason
Yeah.
is like they were trying to be the premium credit card, and so if they portrayed that, then they're almost charging more
charge
for it.
more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep.
That's really good
Because
marketing because it is
essentially,
literally a piece
the
of plastic.
business pays for the perks and the rewards.
Yeah.
That's what credit card processing is. When you're paying that 3% out of pocket, you're paying for that patient's reward program, whatever it is, cashback or flyer miles or hotel nights or points, you're covering that. But now, if the patient wants the points, they can cover it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm a normal dentist and I listen to this podcast and I go, okay, I'm going to actually audit my merchant service fees. So I pull up my statement. What am I looking at? Because this thing is so confusing. It's like worse than like an insurance claim. Like it, I don't know what to look at. Are
No,
there
at,
any
at
things?
least with like an insurance claim, like I know what a buildup is or a crown. Like the words that are in these things, like unless you're in the industry, like I have no idea what they mean.
Yeah, like what does someone need to
Yeah.
look at?
No, you're absolutely right. And why is it like that? Because like a lot of the times, with many companies, a lot of random fees are slapped on to the bottom of that statement. So whereas you want to see what you processed, how much it cost, and what the total was, right, or what you total was out of pocket, you are presented with a lot of this jargon where you, if you're not in the industry of payment processing, you're like, what the hell is this? So overall, if you ignore all of these fees, which you shouldn't ignore them, they're there for a reason. They technically shouldn't be. So when you look at the overall and say, hey, I processed this amount of sales, I processed this amount for this month, I paid this amount of fees, right? And that gives you an understanding of like what your aggregate rate is and how much you're spending on it. And then when you speak to us, we take a look at that or just just roughly estimate it because we have over 4,000 dental practices on board. All of them are doing surcharge. This is what we focus on. So it's across the board. Whatever that figure is that you're spending on credit card processing can be eliminated at least by 50%. No questions asked.
Wow.
But you can eliminate up to 80, 90% of those fees when you're looking at what did I pay for last month, right? And that's really what you want to focus on.
So the other piece too, and I kind of alluded to it in that story at first, was like one thing that I liked with one of the payment processors is that they were linked with either my PMS system, like if it was Open Dental, or it was linked with Flex or some other like overlay on top of Open Dental. Are more companies doing like integrations with the dental softwares? So like it's easier to like post a payment and it automatically posts, right? Or it goes into the patient ledger. Like, are you guys doing anything with that right now with certain softwares?
So yeah, so we do integrate with three softwares: Open Dental, Dentrix, and EagleSoft.
Yeah, the big
The
ones. Yeah.
problem with integrations is that WorldPay Global is a company that has somewhat of a monopoly on all of these softwares, and they don't do surcharging because they would actually lose money on some transactions, and their profit margins are huge, so there's no reason for them to do it. And they have a rev share split with a lot of these software companies. So the software companies don't want other integrations because they're going to lose a stream of income.
Yeah.
So they make it very difficult to integrate. We have a way to do it, but not with all the softwares. But surprisingly, not every office wants integration. A lot of offices want that power of allocating the payments themselves or having more control. But if you're tied into WorldPay Global and you're integrated, you're stuck with them, right? And then they start increasing your rates from 3% to 4% to 5 to 6. And then what are you going to do? You're going to switch to something that's not integrated? No. But then if you don't have any competition that integrates, it limits your choices and ability to do so. So we only integrate with the top three. The other softwares, they are committed to global world pay and they just don't want to give anybody else the opportunity to integrate. So a lot of other companies out there, if they do claim integration, some of them can, but most of the integrations don't work as well. Like Flex integrates with Open Dental, right? But
Yep.
I don't think they integrate with EagleSoft or Dentrix, and they have to do it through a third party, and they have to use different devices and a different company for the devices. So a lot of things come into effect when you're choosing a company that integrates. Do they have one ecosystem, or do you need to use two different companies? Because I know with Flex, I think they use a company called Clover, and you have to use a Clover device, and now you have to deal with another company. So it just becomes a mix, bag of mixed companies together. So you want to find a company that integrates with one slot, one ecosystem, and it eliminates the need to pay three different fees or work with three different support departments or having your team have three different logins just to pull up the same report.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that is what happened with us, right? Because they use when we were using Flex, they were using CardPoint, right? Is the company, right? That's huge, and um, and our fees were going up, but then I always had to make that decision of like, well, it's integrating through Flex, then through Open Dental, so like, am I okay with the cost going up because now my team,
Like it's less errors for
yeah,
them. Yeah.
and they like it, but then at some point it's like, but like the cost savings is so much that you're just like, I can't do it anymore, right? And you kind of hit that breaking point. So yeah, that's why we ended up kind of switching to a surcharging model and then just went with you guys.
Yeah, and at the same time, we did integrate you guys into from our system to your practice management software. So, with us, you retained text to pay and email to pay and cards on file and payment plans and in person and over the phone transactions, and all of that still runs and posts automatically to patients' ledgers. Maybe between those two softwares, the only thing that it lacks is like it doesn't communicate with Flex, and that's fine because we never ask you to get rid of a company like that because they're focused on so many things like communication and scheduling, and they're really good at what they do at that aspect. And we truly stay focused on payments. So when it comes to payments, we focus all on payments.
Yeah.
So everything gets run through us, post automatically, eliminate the fees, and we focus on that.
That makes sense. So, have you guys had a lot of have you guys had offices that have gone from using surcharging to then asking you to go back to a traditional one, or is every single office that has switched has stayed?
They have stayed. No one has
Yeah,
went back to traditional processing.
Yeah.
I mean, like once practices come on board, the one thing that they always tell us is that they could have done this a year ago, 2 years ago. Like you were probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, shit, I should have kept my. I should have gone on board with nadapayments probably before I sold, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is always that something that comes up that like everyone has their own timeline on it, but like they could have came on board earlier. We have no pressure on anyone for that. We educate everyone and present it. Whenever they have their own timeline on it, they do, and they come on board and they realize now we're saving money.
Yeah, I mean that's always it's like a double-edged sword because like you love it when you find something that works, and there's like that part where like for a second you're like, damn it, right? I wish I was doing it earlier, but then you just have to get over that and be like, well, at least I'm doing it now, right?
Yeah. Today's better than tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think it's a law. I mean, I think most practices are still ahead of the curve, right? Steve and I talked about this the other day, how there's like this bell curve, right? It's like in the beginning when it was first released and nobody was really doing it to there's kind of like I think we're at the tip of the spear right now. We're at the very top, right, Steve? Like everyone's kind of just, they know about it. Everyone knows about it. And they're not asking like, what is this? They're asking, let me find out more. How can I do this? Right. And then in a couple of years later, it's like, well, everyone has already done this. So if I'm not already doing it by like the year 2028 or something, then you're really leaving money on the table.
Well, you get that consensus, right? And I think, like you said, you hit that inflection point where enough people are doing it, and there's a big group of people that almost need. There's people who are like early adopters, right? And they're going to try everything right away. But the majority are people who need a little bit, not of a nudge, but like, I need to make sure so-and-so's doing it. Is my friend doing it? What is my friend? I'm going to let them do it for 6 months and then I'll test it out. But yeah, I mean, literally, like, I think all of our friends are doing some sort of a surcharging model, right? Whether or not they're using you guys or someone else, like, everyone's moving to that model.
So when someone onboards with you guys, I know you provide the signage. Do you provide any scripting for like front office personnel that needs to say this actually to the patient? Because I'm sure that's what, like, luckily I wasn't really part of.
No, she was already.
I was already retired.
Out.
I was retired out of this. So, but I know, front office would be like, well, how am I supposed to tell a patient this without them yelling at me? So, like, do you provide any type of really good scripting to use or anything like that to get them trained up?
Yeah, well, part of why we're so successful in implementing the program is because we actually spend time during the training call with the staff. We explain to them, hey, these are the best ways to approach this. If they ask for a script, we can provide a script, but we do some exercises on how to best present the surcharge. What are some rebuttals that the patients might have, and what are the answers to those rebuttals? So we do walk them through the whole process. We don't just throw them to the pool and say, learn on your own, good luck. Hopefully you won't drown. We actually spend time teaching them, educating them, and walking them through the process so they are confident when they're presenting this. They're not worried or afraid that the patient is going to scream at them and be like, how dare you charge me a surcharge? So that's why we're very successful when we implement this in the dental practice.
Okay, so let's try. What were you gonna say?
Have you guys ever, so I know insurance sometimes runs it through, like, you have to run it through your processor for insurance payments sometimes. You get a payment.
Oh, like virtual payments.
Virtual payments. Thank you. See,
She's been out of it too long.
I have been out of it for a while. And you get a virtual payment. And I've always called insurance and been like, don't send me a virtual credit card. Just send me a check. Can you charge the insurance? How does that work? Can you charge the insurance a surcharge?
They're sending only a finite amount on that card.
Yeah, it's like a prepaid amount, so you can't.
Yeah,
they've already taken it out. So I don't think there's only a certain amount available.
It's just going to decline. It's just going to decline on our end.
Nice try.
So
well, you should. Someone should say, "Hey."
You would have to run that card for the lesser amount to get it approved.
Yeah.
No.
But either way,
it's like a gift card almost. Like there's
matter. Yeah, for sure. Like they're sending like funds to practices that they owe. I recommend, doesn't matter who you process with, for your listeners, it would always be best to just get a direct deposit or a check, because that way you're getting 100% of what you send them to.
For sure.
You don't have to worry about credit card.
I think some of those insurance companies, you send them the request and they're like, well, they forgot to they did a lowercase I when it was supposed to be like an uppercase, so we can't approve this one, right? And I feel like there's been several times where I've tried to send them don't send virtual cards, and they're like, maybe we'll just wait until it's like when you're calling someone and you're like operator, and their system makes you say operator 4 times before they actually do it.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But no, okay. So here, maybe we can do a quick little role playing on it, right? And in terms of scripting with stuff. So I guess I can pretend to be the team member, right, who's wants to do this. If I went to one of you guys, and whoever wants to take it can, if I said, okay, what do I say to a patient? How am I not gonna get yelled at?
We all know Eric wants more friends. If you're enjoying this episode, share the podcast and then tell them to DM Eric so he can hit his quota of 1 new friend per day. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at it.
All right, go for it.
I'll just say, all right, let's say, hey, Eric, today your total is $100. We do have a 3% surcharge for credit cards, but we'll waive it for a debit card. How would you like to pay today?
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. So what you did was you kept it simple, and you didn't say, is that okay with you? Or is that going to make you upset? You just said you gave there's 2 solutions, and they have to pick from one of the 2 solutions. I mean, you always talk about that, Alex, is give people two yeses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is
people 2 yeses. That's a really great way to put it. I love that.
Yeah. It works also with kids.
Yeah, right.
but yeah.
No, so I think that's a good one. I mean, that's pretty big. I would just
Yeah,
stick
just
to
don't
that
be
one.
like not confident. Don't be like, oh yeah, we have this 3% surcharge. I'm sorry. Like as soon as you're, not confident about it and stuff, of course someone's gonna get
Yeah,
upset.
they'll
But
take advantage of it, of course. That's why we always tell them, look, be straightforward. This is what it is. We have option A, we have option B. Which option would you like to do? It's not like they're forcing them to do it. They're saying, look, this is what we have. Can you tell us what you feel comfortable with?
yeah,
Yeah.
And because the patient is the one that's choosing, they're not thinking about this fee. They're not thinking of getting upset. They're just saying, okay, I want my Amex reports. Take my credit card. I don't care about the 3%. Or they're going to say, you know what? I actually do want to save 3%. Take my debit card.
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think
And they'll
most
do it
people,
that
and
way.
that's where like 20 minutes ago when I do this all the time. I'll start a story, but then I never really finish what my point was on it. But my point on that story like 20 minutes ago is to say it didn't bother me because I knew there was an option to pay for a credit card and not have to get charged, right?
oh debit card.
Yeah, a debit card and not get charged.
Yeah.
So most people have, I don't know, in my wallet, I would imagine most people have a credit card and a debit card available at their disposal, right? Whether it's in their purse or their wallet. Most people, unless you're like my grandma, doesn't have a checkbook available anymore, right? Like it's just our younger generations just don't do that anymore. So that's where, for me, I got over personally that mental hurdle where I was like, okay, if they're going to do this, then I'll just use a debit card and it's fine. It's okay. There's no like,
Right.
Yeah.
it's not a negative thing. And I think what, maybe this is what helped this too, is when we were talking about COVID, right? With restaurants in particular, not only were they doing like surcharging, but they were also doing like convenience fee and automatic, tipping of the staff, and then extra tipping, right? And then like, busboy fees, whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
They kept on tacking all these extra things on, and then it kind of, I mean, it did piss people off because at some point, like, I feel like when something not new like this, but like something gets implemented in, it's kind of like a Wild West at first. So you get people that are like, I'm gonna see how far I can push this, right? And so people
Right.
push it
Yeah.
far,
Yeah.
and then it just comes back a little bit, right? And it kind of like normalizes. And I think we're at that point now where it's normalizing to where the credit card surcharging is just like, that's where we're gonna end at, and it's like, that's fine and it's good and people are okay with it, and it does help businesses. Like all of us in dentistry, especially ones that take insurance, we are not getting paid way more from Delta or Cigna or any of them. If anything, they're cutting fees, right? So like, I feel like we're more stressed out in the aspect of running the business part because costs are going up everywhere, and so you're looking at little things where it's like, well, ideally I wouldn't want to have to pass it to the patient if I didn't have to, but like we also have businesses to run too, right? We have team to pay, we have team members to pay. They want bonuses, they want raises. Like it doesn't just grow on a money tree, right? So like someone's got to pay for something somewhere, and if it's becoming more commonplace and more of a like socially acceptable, then in my opinion you're kind of dumb if you're not doing it and you're not being a good business owner.
Yeah, and for those insurance practices, a lot of people on these social media platforms, they would say, don't nickel and dime your patients, just raise your fees across the board. Insurance offices can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't raise your fees. You're stuck. So this is a great alternative because your fee is still your fee. You're just charging the surcharge for the convenience of using a credit card, but you are still giving them a choice with debit, cash, or check. And even offices that raise their fees across the board, what they're not realizing is that now the patients who would have paid with a debit or cash or check now have to pay a higher price anyway because the fees were raised across the board. So surcharging is a winning solution in both scenarios because even in the fee for service office, you're able to give them that discount on debit and cash or check. But if you raise your fee across the board, then the patients are paying a higher price on everything.
Yeah, that's actually a really good thought, which I didn't think about that before. It kind of, you're almost hurting the patient more if you're not doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like penalizing the like okay, well my merchant fees have gone up by company ABC, right? Well, I'm just gonna raise my fees by 3-4% for next year across the board, but then you're penalizing your patients who are paying by like debit and cash and check or whatever. So by doing a surcharge model, you're getting rid of that major problem, that overhead, right? And you're giving your patients a choice. So Steve is on the money with that. For the practices that are in network and working with insurances, this is a great way for them to get rid of a large cost and make up for what's lacking in what they're getting reimbursed. And then for the offices that are fee for service, they're getting rid of their processing fees and giving their patients an option without hitting them on debit and cash.
Yeah. Smart decision.
No, I mean, like for us, like I said, I think it's one of those things where it was to like bring it full circle where you're like, I wish I would have just done this earlier. So I think that's the main takeaway that I kind of have for it. But no, I appreciate you guys always coming on. It's fun to kind of go through this. Like I thought that scripting was actually really, really good on that. I mean, thanks again for, sponsoring the podcast with us. Like we enjoy you guys. We want to work with companies that we work with personally that we feel like are doing things the right way. So we appreciate you guys a lot.
We appreciate that. And we
appreciate
you having us on as well.
Awesome.
We're happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you guys.